Hello, welcome everybody to Wisdom Entrepreneurs, Monday, the 18th of January. I'm going to be co-hosting this one with our guest host, Sora Rosenblatt, who will be talking about what she's seen in the moment since she's been doing, is that Instagram interviews that you've been doing, Sora? Yeah, Instagram interviewing real people. I think it's called Real Lives, and just seeing what you can see just by looking into and speaking to, as we all are, real people. So, Sora, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Derek. So I think I guess where would be a good place to start is just to talk a little bit about the I suppose behind me starting these can everyone still hear me? Sorry, I just got a little bit of a buzz. Everyone okay, good. So just the inspiration behind me starting the interviews, I sort of had for a really long time, I knew that the place where I was most present was in conversation. So if I was talking to a friend or talking to a family member about something meaningful, I just got so present with them. And I wanted to share the principles. I had done a one thought, or it might be called, I think it is called One Thought, with Aaron and Leela. I did a foundations program, and I just learned so much about what it means to learn the principles, and I felt like I did want to do some sort of sharing. I also come from a family background where there's a lot of education, especially meaningful education. My father's a rabbi, and he's been involved with Jewish education since meeting people, meeting new people was always something that I did from a really young age. So I guess that's where my comfortableness in conversation probably came from. But I never knew what I wanted that to look like or how I wanted to start or what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to share. And I was watching I didn't have Instagram until a couple of months ago, and I came across a video that somebody had put out. They weren't related to the Three Principles community at all, but they just did a film of themselves just talking about something that they had seen, and that really kind of moved me. It spoke to exactly a situation in my life that I needed to hear what they were saying, and I got in touch with them, and we spoke about it properly. And I just from there thought, hey, maybe Instagram is the place to do it. Practically speaking, it's a really great platform where you can go live with somebody, get into conversation with them live, and you don't have to be in the same room or get the headsets or there's not much practical preparation. It's just very simple. So that's where I started. Now I don't know where it's going, and I don't know kind of what's going to happen with it. I just keep adding people to the list of people coming on. People come on every Sunday, and it's not always kind of Three Principles related necessarily. We sometimes who did I have on recently that wasn't, I mean, even yesterday was Sunday, and the person I spoke to, there was so much wisdom that she had and she shared, but we didn't kind of stick to the principles. But I had Rohini on. I don't know if you guys are familiar. She's unbelievable from California. I was so glad that she came on because I'm kind of this little like I do see myself still as a little kid, and so it's kind of so what's a good word for this? I want to say this right. It's so encouraging when people who have really spent their lives working on something and building something are interested or are willing to just speak to me. So that's just why I was so happy with, I guess that's how it began and what it looks like. And usually I kind of try and draw out of other people their wisdom, and I try and listen to them and get present with them. And it's interesting because I've never kind of stated that openly, but there have been on 3 separate occasions where someone has said to me at the end of the call or while we were still live, just said to me, "Oh, by the way, you're such a good listener." And every time they say that, I'm like, I think back to a exercise that we did in the One Thought program. Foundations, Kate will know because she was on it with me, and that's where I learned to listen. And that's been listening has been a real big part of, I guess, my journey in the principles, because people like really appreciate and see when people are listening. You don't have to kind of say anything or tell them or try. It just happens when you know what that means. I suppose that's the kind of general gist of the page. But if I was gonna move on to any, when I share, if I'm sharing the principles, then sharing the principle, ignore that, rewind. If I'm sharing just things that have been helpful to me in my life, I usually just default to talking about insights that I've had. So I'm not very good at explaining what things are or how things like look. All I know is what I've seen. All I know is lessons I've learned and things that were meaningful to me that have changed the way I see things. That's all I really know to talk to. And it's the only kind of honest sharing that there is. It's what you've really seen on a deeper level. And the way I distinguish between those two things is, if somebody, I'm not afraid of saying something that I honestly believe. I'm not afraid of people questioning it or people coming up against it, because it's just it's a very confident and firm understanding that I have about something. So that's what I would call a kind of insight. Now, anyone can stop me at any point if I'm rambling or going in a direction that isn't kind of what you're used to on this platform. Seeing Derrick shaking his head, so it seems like we're good so far. And again, if anyone has any questions during the talk, they're welcome to unmute themselves. You're not limited to the end. But I suppose I can keep going with talking about the different insights that I've had that have been meaningful to me and have impacted me. And I think the one I want to start with is, and this is actually something I was talking to Jacqueline with when we went live, was about trying to make other people feel comfortable. So that could be it can come up in the form of, we were talking about it in the context of awkward silences, where you go silent for a second and someone feels, you think that someone else is feeling uncomfortable, so you start feeling uncomfortable, so you try and say something, but really you've got nothing to say, so you start talking nonsense, and then it gets even more uncomfortable because now you're not even making sense. And there's kind of it goes into that. But what's kind of cool that I saw is sometimes you being comfortable, you getting comfortable is the best way to help somebody else get comfortable. I don't know if it's the only way, but I know for me, that's the best way that I could think of. And so when there are awkward silences, or I feel myself starting to get a little bit like uncomfortable, I just know I want to look for that comfort. I don't want to try and preempt or anticipate what they're feeling or what the person I'm with is thinking. I just want to get comfortable in myself. And usually that's when the conversation kind of restarts in a real place, because in a way I think conversations are, because I'm talking in context of conversations because that's what I do on my live. And it's interesting, my brother, who's 14, he said to me, I said, like, have you seen any of my lives? He said, yeah, I saw one of them, that was nice. The other one, everyone's just waffling, it's all waffle. And it was funny because in a way there are times where people talk, and just to someone who is present themselves, it just sounds like a whole bunch of words. But if you can get into the feeling of it, then it's not waffle anymore. It's because it's not the form of the words that really matter in the conversation anyway. It's just getting people to a place where they can listen to their own wisdom. And it was just funny when my brother was like, yeah, it's all waffle. Oh well, one day we'll get him on board. But yeah, that was one of the really big insight and really helpful for me, because I did struggle a lot with just insecurity around other people, and trying to make people feel good in my presence so that they would like me, or they would just want to be with me more. I could kind of analyze it, but it doesn't really matter why. But I just know I was doing that, and I think at times I lost. I would give up on a little bit of what I really wanted to say, or what my truth was, because of that. Because I was thinking so much about making the other person feel comfortable. So
Can I share something there, Sora?
Yeah.
I love what you're saying so much. That can be applied to so many areas. Not just in the uncomfortable silence, but that what I really saw in that moment when you said that is that, you said, when the best thing you can do is get comfortable, and that's what helps the other person. And I really saw that in any situation, whether it's conflict, whether it's misunderstanding, whether it's silence, whatever it is, if I can get comfortable being in that uncomfortable, immediately that situation dissipates a little bit already. Like that comfortable, sometimes Wilson talks about grounded brings grounded. It's like that, isn't it? It's that comfortable automatically attracts a level of comfortable everywhere. It sort of emanates out or something. But I just really saw how you can, or I can do that anywhere. And I saw it even in a recent situation where I could see that I was uncomfortable. And so I got more and more het up because I was uncomfortable and I didn't want it to be like that. And, and actually I knew in that moment, I didn't put it like that, but I knew in that moment that I was wanting not this uncomfortable situation. So I was uncomfortable with the uncomfortable situation, but I saw that actually if I just step back a minute and just step back from this, and it's what you're saying, I got more comfortable and my level of consciousness definitely rose in that instant, and I saw things differently in that instant, even though I didn't still see things the same, if that makes sense. So that being comfortable or being okay, being comfortable with that changes everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it changed so many things for me. And you know what's funny is if you asked somebody Like, you know, a few months ago, was Sarah, or, you know, 5 years ago, was Sarah this type of awkward, uncomfortable person in conversation? They would say no. They would say no, Sarah, I don't think she ever was. But it's not what it looks like on the outside that changes, it's how it feels on the inside that changes. And that's what changed for me when I saw that.
And when you look at it, when you put it like that, you know, it doesn't really matter how it looks on the outside, because all that really matters is how you think it looks on the outside. And that's what you kind of play to. Or when you know that that's not important, it's how you see it in that moment. And that is it. And that is everything. Whatever anybody else thinks you can't control, you've got no power over that. So just work with what you've got within you. And just to touch back on what you said before, Sora, it's just so, I just love hearing the wisdom coming out of your mouth from a young person, to hear that wisdom. In a way, it just sounds so pure and just like not believable, but yeah, so simple. You just laid it out so simple, because I could take you back to when you said about we can only talk about our experience. For me to share, I can't share something about K or P or because I've never been there. I can only talk about what I've seen. And by me talking about what I've seen might help to teach somebody else to look inside themselves and see a resemblance in something what they've seen. And then from there it kicks off. I can't teach nobody anything new. I can only tell them my experience. And I love you. So you think you said, oh, you can only share from there. So that is a real sharing from what you've seen. And I think that's beautiful. You eloquated that so beautiful. I was a bit caught up in listening to what you were saying, actually. It was pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think sometimes this is definitely a mistake that I made in school when I was like in sixth form, and I was first learning about the principles because my parents had they set me up with Aaron, and I did an intensive with him when I was in sixth form, was it? And I thought I got it all. It was like, yeah, this is so cool. Like on a philosophical level, it was like everything's thought, so nothing really exists. So I can think things into being, and everything I look at is just thinking, and you don't have to take anything seriously. But it was all words. Like it was all words. And the minute you got a little bit deeper, or you asked me questions, or something, it would all sound like absolute gibberish. And I feel I used to get so upset at my friends who weren't buying into it. I was like, why don't you guys like see this? It's helped so many people, and it's changed so many lives, and why aren't you seeing it? Like you're just not, and going on the One Thought foundations program a few years after that, I really understood that I knew nothing then. Like maybe I did know something, but I wasn't sharing what I knew. That's for sure. And I was just sharing what the words on the outside. And it was just interesting because now I actually have friends who have become interested, and they are starting to come to me and ask me, oh, what's this about? And it's just so funny that I wanted it so much back then. And now I don't really mind if people want to listen or not, but for some reason people are wanting to hear. So that's kind of encouraging for me, to know that I'm somewhere on the right track with sharing what I know. Sharing what I know makes sense.
So if I'll just say, and you know what, a lot of people, I definitely made that mistake, because when I first got principles, or when I first come into contact with this understanding, I wanted to share it to everybody. And what you just said again, I was sharing the words and saying, why aren't you listening to me? Listen to what but I wasn't sharing the feeling. And then only when I dropped into a space, I don't know when, but when I started to share it through sharing myself, then I was sharing it. And then, like you said, people got curious. And people that you weren't thinking were listening to you suddenly come back and ask you a question. Oh, what was that thing that you said last week about? And you think, okay, it's getting through like that. So when you try and force it with the words, you could talk all day and nobody won't hear you. And it's just like what you said about your brother when he said he was listening to the things that one was interesting, but one was chatting gibberish. You know that all he has to do is just be present, and he will get into that, whatever that and go behind the words again. Because all he's hearing is the words, and to him, that's gibberish. But to go behind, and that's like me when I'm trying to share it the first time. To the people, they were looking at me like I'm talking gibberish. And I'm looking at them like, can't you hear the sense I'm talking? And it's only now I'm realizing it's the feeling that I was sharing without sort of knowing it, if that even makes sense.
Yeah. What I find as well is I'm learning more now. When I'm having the conversations with people, I'm talking more to what it really is. So I'm learning more. And they ask me questions and I have to check in about it. And then my picture or my insight becomes more complete because I have to check in and they're talking to what I'm saying. And it's real and it's consistent. Because sometimes if you try and share it on an intellectual level, you can get tangled up and you can end up sounding inconsistent. Now I'm going to try and think of an example where that's happened. Or it's not that you sound inconsistent, it's that you cannot what's the word? You can't like marry up some like inconsistencies. So if you get intellectual about the principles and the route that I went down, which is kind of what I was saying before, in that everything's just thought. So they're like, well then why can't I walk through this table? It's just thought. And there's an inconsistency there. And you're like, oh help. Yeah, good question. But when you go, oh no, that's not the point. It's not like the point isn't that everything's thought. It's that when you see something specific that you thought was so powerful in your life, and when you see that as thought, that's when it changes for you. It's all has to be relevant. Everything's got to be relevant. So it was just, did you?
No, so I was just going to say, you're talking about my insight, because that's what broke me, if I can put it like that. Something that was so relevant in my life that I held strong and as a foundation for the past 30, 40 years. I looked at it and I just saw it was fault. And that crumbled, and that was like the foundation that was the bedrock of me. And that just crumbled in an instant. So then if that was fault, but like you said, to get somebody to that stage to look at it in that way, other than, oh, why can't I walk through the door if it's just fault? It's that process of, like you said, when you see that for yourself, it's individual, it's relative to me, and that changed everything. So everybody can only see something was sort of relative to them, and yeah, I love it. And can I just say something else as well? When you said you noticed you was present when you was talking, when you was in conversations. I know, like footballers, and they're the people who are present without knowing that they're really present, because to go on a football field, just say, right, whistle blows, and they're in the game, and without knowing, they are proper present. And the more present they are, the better game they have. So that's their talent. So your talent is in talking, conversating with people. So then in that, you're present, and that's the best time to be present, because then you can listen, you can talk back to what you're hearing. And then now you've found yourself talking to people in the real people on Instagram. It's all set out. That's beautiful. I just think that's a beautiful little story. Yeah, and that is a real gift.
I wanted to add something there, Sora, as well, which is that by sharing that, like you're, this is what I heard was, I looked at where I was present, and I'm most present in conversations because that's my background, that's what I'm used to doing. And I saw that I was most present in conversations. So then I was like, oh, that's what I'll do. And that is such a simple way of working out how you can share. Instead of, generally, we look to much more form. Oh, I'll create this program, or I'll go and work with this population, or I'll go and do this and I'll go and do that. actually you use the very thing that we're talking about to look back to yourself and go, where am I most present? Because that's where I'm going to be most impactful, most true, most whatever. And we can all do that. You know, where am I? And it doesn't mean that we can't look to being present elsewhere, but it does point to where we are fitting naturally. And we often miss that. So I know that there's people on this group even tonight who maybe in the past have missed where actually they're already doing a good job there because they're already present with that person or those people or in that situation. But it's so natural, they don't think that's it. They look for something else. It's something else. Whereas actually you're saying, look for where it looks natural, look for where it looks you're most present, look for where you're just really comfortable and you can glide there, and that's the perfect place. And whatever will come from that will feel really natural.